Well, greetings, everyone, and welcome to Toula's Tips for Caregivers. I am so happy to be with you again. For any first-time listeners, my name is Toula Wooten. I am the radio show host for this show, Toula's Tips for Caregivers. I am here for you, the caregiver, especially those caregivers who are caring for an aging relative. My background is medical social work. I've helped so many families find resources to help care for their loved one as they age, and as we, the caregivers, age as well. My background, again, is medical social work, and I also lead the Caregiver Coalition of Northeast Florida. And by the way, I am the primary caregiver for my own aging relatives. My parents are 85 and 83, and I have been their primary caregiver for about 5 years. So I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about this role and offer you some inspiration today. I'm very fortunate to be able to bring to you a special guest today. His name is Richard Louie. Richard was the keynote speaker at the expo that we had here in Jacksonville, Florida on May 13th. The Caregiver Expo is held annually to help caregivers find resources and have a day of pampering and fun for themselves. Richard, again, was our keynote, and he had some great stories to tell about taking care of his dad. Richard is with MSNBC. He lives in New York, where he does the news every Saturday and Sunday, and then during the week he flies out to San Francisco to help care for his father. Yes, that long commute every week to help take care of his dad. Richard has been caring for his dad now for about 3 years, and he's very fortunate to have an employer who has been very flexible with him and his hours. Richard's talk at the Caregiver Expo is joyful, enlightening, and very helpful. He reminded me that there are lots of things that we can learn and lots of things we can laugh at in our role caring for our parents. So please stay tuned and listen to this talk that Richard Louie gave, and then afterwards I'm going to do a separate show detailing me and some of the questions that I asked Richard afterwards. Here's Richard.
Good morning to all of you. How is the Caregiver Expo doing? How's Jacksonville doing? Yeah. And of course, the great state of Florida. Yes, we can't. I'm a Californian, we like big states. We like all the different. I have to say Northeast Florida, don't I? I have to be very specific about that. I'm no dummy. Thank you, Justine, for the kind words. Toula as well for your years and years of work on this, and for all of you. And I know the years that you have given and will continue to give as caregivers as well as those who are receiving care. How has the day been so far? Has it been a day of teamwork? I was walking through and I could feel the energy out there on the floor. Feeling good so far? Yeah, who's got a massage so far? Yeah, all right. Stay awake, please. Stay awake. Day of fellowship, right? Day of sharing stories, and a day of fun. A lot of fun as you get to work with each other and be inspired on this Saturday. It is really great to be here because for me, the discussion that we're having today is important when we think of the efforts that are happening here. Because I always think of, how did I learn this idea of caring? And you got a sense of that from the video that AARP put together. But part of that story is the background behind that. Like, what's the muscle set that we get that gives us the ability to react in the ways that we do? And I always, folks will ask me that, and I think, well, the thing that inspired me, or when I try to understand why is it that I do the things I do, I think of all the stories that I've had to tell about our country. And the one thing that I've noticed over the last 12 years at CNN and MSNBC and NBC News is that there's just a lot of folks who care. And that's kind of heartening. We watch certain things on TV. Don't say anything, please. No words. And you got to wonder, I don't want no blurting today, no blurting, unless it's positive, is that there's a lot of folks who care. Every place I go to, every town I go to, I find people that care, and I listen. You find them in every corner. And it's places like this and events like this where folks have stepped up for that highest honor, right? Because I'm gonna do something. And it's in those places like today where I learn and I get inspired. The conversations I had just hanging out there on my simple little seat, talking to folks, and I really enjoy every moment. And my journey is just like yours. And I'm very humbled to be able to chat with you today for a little bit about what I've been going through and what I plan on going through and how the values have been instilled in me over time. And for me, it would have to, as many of you know, go back to, you're in Florida. You drive a little bit here, don't you? Here and there, back and forth. And I used to do the same in California. We'd take these long 10, 11-hour drives south from San Francisco to Los Angeles because my mom was from L.A. and my dad was from Northern California. And I would always remember, because each arrival in Southern California was always met by my grandfather's wrinkly finger. And he would say, he'd point at a flyer that was taken in 1943. And the flyer was this right here. Cal ships, 200 ships for victory. Now, what you can't see necessarily is on the bottom right-hand corner, he put the date that he had taken it home and framed it, which was June 1943. And that key point of 200 ships for liberty was so important to him, because my grandpa worked in the Los Angeles shipyards, and he built the Liberty ships. And for those of you who remember the history so well, those are the ships that fueled our World War II victories, those D-Day victories that we remember from that difficult time. All the Allied victories across the world and in the Asian theaters as well. And although it was 50 years later, every single time, it's like his eyes were saying, it was yesterday. This happened yesterday. It's 1943, Grandpa. But he would say, look, see that thing? I built it. And he would point to these gun turrets at the very front, because the gun turret was what he said he worked on. And it was the time that he was in that very area where he would tell his daughter, my mom, an 8-year-old daughter, on family day at the shipyard, and it was round pieces of steel the size of this stage here, and he would say how, and he'd tell me the same thing, look at these pieces of metal, we turned it into these 4-inch gun turrets that sit in front of every single Liberty ship. I built that. And he was very proud of it. Now, Grandpa, as you can probably imagine, worked, I'm just figuring out how to hit black on this. We'll just leave it there. It was very interesting because for my grandfather, he worked long hours, as you can probably imagine, the shipyard for his immigrant family. And then over the years, what I noticed is his sense of military service, it just grew and grew, at least when you looked at it thematically. It rubbed off. 3 of his sons enlisted in the U.S. Armed Forces. Their pictures in military uniform were up on the living room mantle for everybody to see when you walked into the house. But my mom also did her part. She worked 12-hour days. She probably did more than her part. She worked 12-hour days in the family corner store. She cooked all 3 meals for the family. She was the youngest daughter of 8. And then she would stay up after she would finish closing the till for their corner store and having to count everything up. She'd be able to start studying around midnight, and that's why she's a night owl. She'd stay up from about midnight to 3 a.m. And today, my mom, no less dogged, no less tough, as she cares every day for her husband, my father, who now battles Alzheimer's. And she is the primary caregiver that lives with him. She's taken on a brand new career at the young age of 83, in her young 80s. And that new title, which all of you are very familiar with, is called Family Caregiver. That's her new career. It's a full-time job, as many of you know. It requires 100 hours of overtime each week, with 0 fringe benefits and 0 salary. but she does it. And statistics show that so tough is her new job, it's more likely that she, like so many others, will probably die before the person she's caring for because of that stress, which is the case of what we've seen before, as I've seen in my own family too with my uncle. But the numbers are changing, and they're mainly changing because we now know more about what Alzheimer's is. We're in a great time where we can actually talk about caregiving. We can talk about this stuff in different ways in different places. It's not about old or young. It's about every day, right? It's about family. It's about what we do. And when we think of Alzheimer's, this is the number I wanted to show you, is that 1 out of 3 people born today will have it or another dementia-related illness, according to the Alzheimer's Association. 1 out of 3 born today. And, before it was, Dad, you're just a little loopy. Just a little loopy. And now we know it is the 6th largest, and if we could block the screen, that'd be great. It is the 6th largest killer in America. Now, my mom's sense of honor in dealing with this for family reminds me of another great conversation I had. That's with a family, Jason and Alexis Cornine. They're a couple I interviewed last year on MSNBC. Alexis was on duty in the U.S. Armed Services. And on that day, there was an accident. A crane got loose, and then that crane struck her in the head. She suffered spinal cord injuries, obviously head injuries, when that crane struck her. Walking and talking and seeing was something she could not do anymore without assistance. Her husband, Jason, along with their 2 young daughters, about this yay high, they suddenly became caregivers overnight. And they are actually, when we talk about the military, this number, they are now part of over 5.5 million caregivers nationwide that are giving. They're called hidden heroes, and the Elizabeth Dole Foundation has called that out and said, look at these 5.5 million folks that are given everything for our country and serving the military. Now they must serve again, their entire family. And the amazing thing about what they're doing is Alexis and Jason are in their 20s and 30s. They have a full 50 years, half a century ahead of caregiving. And those young 2 daughters are now caregivers. They're 2 of the 1 million child caregivers that are out there today. And they're amazing because they mean so much for our future, because they have an idea and a perspective that we don't have. And all said, as Toula was mentioning here, what we're really looking at is this number, and that is the over 40 million people across the country that do give the unpaid caregiving duty. Unpaid. Caregiver is the most common job in America. Anybody know what the second most popular, most common job in America is, by the way? Motherhood, yeah, I agree with that one. I do. Yeah. I got to change these numbers. Okay, then the third most common job in America. Anybody? Teachers. It is retail sales. Yeah, but guess what? This is 10 times the number of that. And guess what? They count retail sales jobs. They don't count this job. This job you don't see on any statistic. You won't see the Department of Labor does not have caregiver in there. Yet there are over 40 million of us that do this thing. Now, as we look at that common job and how it's, again, 10 times greater than any other job, is a statistic that is, which I'll get to shortly, is how do we work that in then? Because it's not officially counted, and we all have other obligations along the way. Well, almost 2 years ago, I joined that 40 million people, and as you could tell in the video, it wasn't because I knew this was going to happen. But I was able, thanks to the management at MSNBC and NBC Universal, to work part-time as a news anchor. Part-time. And a real Captain Obvious footnote here, if you like to be on TV as an anchor, you don't ask not to be on TV. Doesn't work that way. It's like if you want to be a better surgeon, can I please operate less? Fewer times, please. That makes a lot of sense. Please, may I do fewer surgeries? But we all know it's okay because sometimes, a lot of times, doing and earning less is more. Now, people are really surprised when I say I take care of my dad. It's a common thought. Isn't that what the woman does? Obviously, there's only 3 people that ever said that to me. But they are a strong 3 people, I got to tell you. My answer is no. Not completely, at least. Because the number is this. 4 in 10 caregivers are men, according to AARP in a new study. 4 in 10. It's doggone close, isn't it? But we would never know that. So imagine if we didn't have these stereotypes. Caregiver equals a woman's job or a job that may not be as whatever that means. And so I used to say I take care of my dad, and now what I say is I am a caregiver. It is a job. And I think the more men that say this in this audience, I'd argue we'd take on the job more and we'd see 50-50. Along the way, we'd also break down one of the biggest stereotypes that are out there in our discussion of everyday life. Imagine that. We actually would have equality, finally, in the most popular job, the most common job in America. It's unpaid, but that's what we got, right? It's an interesting thought. I've got another number I wanted to share with you because the value of the 40 million people, all of us included here, is this number here. That's the value of the work we're doing. What is that number? I can't even say what it is. It's big. 9 numbers. I don't know. It's $500 billion. $500 billion each year for free, unpaid. Now, I was curious, okay, so how much is this worth, all this work we're doing, right? Okay, so that's a big number, but I now said it's 10 times more common. But what else would that mean if you were to think about it? Well, this is what it looks like if every single worker in these 17 states worked for free for a year. 17 states. They decided, you know what? I'm going to get up. I don't know if anybody would do this. I'm going to get up and I'm going to work for free for the next year. And that gives us a sense. 17 states for the entire year, from Alaska to Vermont. So, therefore, to try to keep the cost of labor low, you know what my family did, and we can go ahead and thank you. To try to keep the cost of labor low, in my family, is we tried to be really techie. We're from California. Be really techie. We think we're all a MacGyver. We would do something really cool, and the new 2016 series, if y'all are aware there's a new series, but maybe you don't. And when we look at that, if you do have to look it up, we're using things like Google Docs to log all of our visits. We'll put in what we learned so we all can share because we're in different cities across the country. We can share directly on that doc, and it's we can edit and add comments and questions and things like that. We've got web stream cameras, which maybe some of you do. I will watch it when I'm sitting at 30 Rockefeller Center, just pulling them up to see what's happening. And if my father falls, I can go back because I keep all the video and see how he slipped, or because seeing or hearing he fell is different than when you actually can watch and see when it happens. That's been very helpful. We got the digital door locks. We have the wandering sensors. We have a doorbell that senses when he tries to get out of the house. We've reversed the lock, as I mentioned. And with all that stuff, I was thinking about maybe MacGyver isn't the right word, and maybe we can start using it at this expo. We'll call it caregivers. Caregivers is what we'll be. We'll be those, those folks that really know what's going on. A typical week for me, as you could probably see, is something like this. On Monday, I get on this 10-hour door-to-door trip that starts in New York to San Francisco. I help out with my parents until Friday. Then I hop on another 10-hour trip, door-to-door, back to New York. I land at 2 o'clock generally into JFK. I head directly to work at 30 Rock. I work until 11 p.m. that night wearing makeup. None today, though, good thing. And then I anchor on Saturday and Sunday, and then on Monday I repeat and rinse. Last year I was just, because I wanted to figure out, it felt like a lot. And it was, 300,000 miles last year, and that's about 12 times around the world. And, you forget, because as all of you know as caregivers, it could be an 8-hour drive or it could be an 8-hour flight. We're just going to do it. And you look back and you go, wow, that was a lot of stuff. That's okay. So 12 times around the world, I do it again, and I'll probably do it again this year and the coming years. A typical day goes like this, and this is really sharing something I think all of you can sympathize with. My father, when I'm there, he runs to the door or window. He tries to open it 2 or 3 times. I try to stop him. He remembers that his old bed is in a different place in the old house. He does not remember that his new bedroom is just about 10 feet away. The door locks don't allow him to get out. At night, he lays down, and then he forgets. It's only been about 2 minutes. So he gets out of bed, he goes to the bathroom, and thinks it's morning again. We have to tell him, no, it's not. We walk him back to his room, put him back to bed. And that happens about 20 times every night until 3 a.m. And that's therefore, as you are familiar with, 24 hours a day monitoring is now what we must do. But it also means, if you're counting with me, 20 times each night. I'd be pretty grumpy if I got up 20 times every night. But you know what he does instead? Every time I will put him into bed, he squeals with joy. Like he's like, yeah! And he squeals. That's, if you're counting, by the way, 20 times he squeals. He squeals because he remembers that joy when you go to bed as a kid. Like, oh, this is great. This is great. And so for him, every time, it's kind of fun he's like, thank you. That childlike. And so if he can smile in this difficulty, I always say, I can smile too. I can do the very same thing he's doing. We're familiar that these activities are the ADLs, right? The activities of daily living. I call it the poop and eating stuff. And in fact, my dad now poops in places he didn't before. He eats nonstop. I'm glad we can laugh at all this. And he's known to now streak a little. Yeah, no clothes. That's right. So here is my 83-year-old father, a former social worker, a pastor. He loves everything I cook. He laughs at all my jokes. He says, Jesus says eating cookies makes you skinny. He's got some special talk with God, I guess, going on. They don't make you skinny, Dad. He tells me he loves me every 30 minutes. And he hugs me every 30 minutes as well, because he forgets. And I love you, Richard. Yeah. And sometimes he even, hugs me without his pants on. Imagine that or not. But my dad and I know each other now in ways we didn't before. Now, as we are closer, it includes, of course, the tough stuff too. And I feel like I'm watching, as I've said to many of my friends, like, well, what is this like who have not had to care for an Alzheimer's patient? And I said, I feel like it's like watching my father slowly die in front of me, just little by little. And at times, I do get overwhelmed. As many of you know, it's tough. Those times where you got that feeling, it's just like in your bones, you're just like so like upset, you're sad, and you're like, wow. But then I remember who he taught me to be. And one of those times is when I was in elementary school, and it's very instructive to me. I'd say, Dad, I'm getting bullied. I didn't use the word bully because we didn't use it back then. I said, I'm getting beaten up at school, getting bullied. And he sat me down and he said, you got two options. Keep on getting beaten up or defend yourself. Pretty straightforward guy. So I said, and he said, if you want to defend yourself, we'll enroll you in martial arts classes. That's not typical Dad. But that's what he said. And so began 5 years of training with and I'm not joking here, training with a Shaolin Temple Kung Fu monk. It's like right out of a movie. He didn't know about Asian stereotypes, obviously, either. Had no idea. So after learning from, and this guy was kind of cool because he was like Bruce Lee at the time. This guy was like really cool. And after learning from this monk, I thought I was Bruce Lee. I was ready to fight after all, and people knew it because there I was. At least I had the confidence because Bruce was bad. Bruce was bad. He was good. And nobody wanted to face a kid version of Bruce Lee, right? Because that was me. A 4'10" Bruce Lee, freshly chiseled by a legit Shaolin Temple former Kung Fu monk. That was my title. And I was, though I was a little bit young at the time, I kind of looked the part. You can see I was kind of like, doing those moves off the side of that's how tall I was, so I have to do that. But that's what my father taught me to do. He taught me how to fight, right? He gave me that. So today, as my father struggles, I'm still that 9-year-old, I think. I'm still ready to fight. But now I do it for him. And I take my father to buy his favorite chocolate donut, to buy his favorite tuna fish sandwich, because he can't do that alone anymore. He doesn't know the words to use. People have pushed him, they've stolen from him, but now we're here for him, me and my family. I will fight for him, because just as he fought for me as a child, I will do the same. So in these times, as I travel to tell stories of our great country, I've realized I'm not so unique, that this is just who we are in this place. My grandfather's care of country, my mom's care of family, the Corning's care of military service, me learning how to care from their examples and yours and all the other stories that I hear across the country, that really is all of us, isn't it? It's all of us in this room. And so with my dad, now that honor today for me is to be there to give and to care and to learn, and then to see that younger, stressed-out father of mine, when he was trying to raise 4 kids, is today now an always joyous man, smiling. And I've learned that, I'm really not watching him die in front of me anymore. I really believe through this sickness, in its own way, I am now watching my father be reborn. Thank you.